This video will contain spoilers for Deltarune chapters 1 through 4. Go play those first. I don't know why you'd be here if you haven't. BUSTER, Susie's signature spell. This spell has always fascinated me. It's important enough to be the name of the main battle theme for starters, and it's the only attack spell that the main party currently knows. But would you believe me if I said that I believe that this spell has significant thematic significance? I'm not exaggerating or joking. I legitimately believe that this spell is important. I believe it is symbolic of what Susie's overall importance to this narrative is. Don't believe me? Well, let's get into it then. My name is Brix Braxium, and I'm a Deltarune lore nerd and theorist. I previously made a video back in the chapters 1 and 2 days on the deaths, way back in 2023, which was 2 years ago now. But now I'm back, with even more ideas. I don't know if I'm going to make another theory video after this, but I wanted to throw my hat into the ring once more with the release of the new chapters. So, without further ado, I want to talk about BUSTER. BUSTER is a spell that Susie knows from the moment that we meet her in chapter 1. It costs 50% TP and, according to the description, inflicts moderate root elemental damage to one foe. It uses both the attack and magic stat in its calculation, which is now on screen. As a result, it scales with the attack stat way more than it does with the magic stat. It also considers defense for its damage calculation. I want to compare this to a similar spell, Ice Shock. Ice Shock inflicts magical ice damage to one enemy, costing 16% TP to do so. Its attack calculation is a bit more complicated than BUSTER's, as you can see on screen, but notably it relies purely on the magic stat and ignores enemy defense. On the surface, Ice Shock seems to be the better spell. It doesn't deal as much damage as BUSTER at first, but it's significantly cheaper, it ignores defense, and it scales like crazy when Noelle becomes stronger. While this is purely speculative, it almost comes off like Ice Shock is more properly cast. Ice Shock is described as magical damage. BUSTER isn't. Ice Shock doesn't need to be aimed, it just surrounds the target. BUSTER has to travel to the opponent, and it can presumably miss or be dodged. The knight even tries dodging it here. It's unclear whether this works. It kind of looks like they're taking damage, but in any case, it seems to be splash damage if anything. But there's even more to it than that. Noelle's magic is distant in some sense. There's a level of detachment, there's distance. This is, at least partially, while we're able to manipulate her so easily into becoming stronger, it's easy to not think about it. They're just enemies after all. She casts her spell and then it just kinda happens near the enemy. But BUSTER, on the other hand? It's a direct extension of Susie herself. She's not naturally talented with magic. Her magic set is worse than Ralsei's and Noelle's. But hell if that'll stop her. She channels everything she has into her axe and she just sends it out as a bolt of root energy. My point is this, Ice Shock deals perfect magical damage to an enemy, piercing their defenses. It's better than its Susie crit, and it scales drastically. It's simple, cost-efficient attack magic. BUSTER is a direct extension of Susie herself. It is her raw emotion and passion channeled into one attack. It might not be perfectly cast, it might not be a perfect spell, but it's hers, and she'll use it to kick your ass. The way I see it, BUSTER as a spell, be it symbolically or literally, is Susie's resolve. This is why it's a BUSTER. What does it mean to be rude? To be impolite, to not follow the rules, the expectations. And well, if there's one thing that Susie's really good at, it's breaking literally every single expectation that anyone could have of her. Is it truly by chance that out of anyone in the party, it's Susie who talks back to the Roaring Knight? And more importantly, is it by chance that the only party member who can actually do anything of substance against the Knight is Susie, with BUSTER specifically? Chris, under most circumstances, is holding back. Susie and Ralsei do chip damage at best. But BUSTER, through sheer force alone, overcomes this. Not by having an elemental advantage or anything like that, but just because it's that strong. Consider also the Titan at the end of chapter 4. Everything seems bleak. The Titan, who we thought we were almost beating, can just regenerate, and there doesn't seem to be anything that we can do. So what do? We call on BUSTER. Well, technically it's Dual Buster, but come on, it's clearly BUSTER being cast here. Hell, it's not even BUSTER, even though the narration and animation shows that it's soul shining. I think this is because, thematically, it's more important that it's BUSTER specifically here. Because the point isn't that Susie is super strong now because the soul is shining on her. The point is that Susie has hope and that she's casting that passion at the enemy. Both Susie and GERSON cast BUSTER at the Titan, and it works. The impossible is overcome through sheer willpower alone. In both of these fights, we're up against a foe who is practically out of our league, and yet, to both, The answer is BUSTER. In the Titan fight, it's given extra attention, and in the Knight fight, it's basically the only way to win unless you're some super programmer god who can no-hit everything. And speaking of the Knight, I want to take a bit here to talk about the Shadow Crystals, since I think they're more relevant to Susie than you might think. I generally believe at this moment in time that the key to getting the best ending of Deltarune will require us to get all of the Shadow Crystals. Currently, as of Deltarune Chapter 4, there are 4 Shadow Crystals for us to collect. 3 out of 4 of them are extremely relevant to this discussion, and even the outlier is still somewhat important. I believe that every Shadow Crystal right now is part of a larger narrative, one where Susie gains confidence, which will ultimately result in her being able to challenge fate. Let's go over all 4 crystals in order. The first crystal is obtained from JEVIL. JEVIL and Susie have a lot of parallels. They both, in Chapter 1 at least, kind of have similar philosophies. Namely, they kind of both don't have an investment in the Dark World. JEVIL because he sees it more as a game, and Susie because she's not really willing to be open and genuine. Both JEVIL and Susie go wild, attacking everyone they see because it's the easy path and because it's a bit more fun that way. In a lot of ways, JEVIL is kind of like a dark Susie, an extreme, twisted version of what she could become if she doesn't undergo character growth. There are 2 items that you can collect from defeating JEVIL, depending on how you do it. You can either receive the JEVIL's Tail or the Devil's Knife. JEVIL's Tail was generally considered to be the better item in Chapters 1 and 2. It provides a flat +2 stat bonus to all stats, which makes it very well rounded. And in Chapters 1 and 2, there's not much else that rivals +2 MG. But this changed drastically with the newer chapters. As of 1 to 4, the better item right now, at least in my opinion, is the Devil's Knife, which to those who understood why it was bad, kind of seems like it comes out of nowhere. After all, the Devil's Knife is garbage in Chapter 2, as the JEVIL's Tail plus Auto Axe does similar damage, and the 10% TP reduction isn't very useful in most fights and barely makes a difference. However, with Chapters 3 and 4, this has changed. +4 magic is actually good now, since Susie's healing is actually worth using. And 10% TP reduction is nothing to sneeze at either. And I want to call special attention to that one for a moment. Devil's Knife makes BUSTER easier to cast. Why? Well, let's think about what BUSTER represents. And it starts to make sense. JEVIL's whole thing is that he doesn't care about the rules, and he does whatever he damn well pleases.
I can do anything!
Obviously, he and Susie are not the same. Susie does whatever she wants because she doesn't really care about the rules. JEVIL straight up doesn't believe the rules can be enforced. And while Susie, by the end of Chapter 4, thinks the prophecy is a bit stupid and wants to try and defy it, JEVIL completely revels in it as absolute truth. But either way, the spirit is there. JEVIL is used to doing whatever he wants. He ignores the rules. They don't matter to him. And so, he makes BUSTER easier to cast. And that 10% reduction actually makes a significant difference. BUSTER is extremely important to the Knight fight, and while it isn't that useful in the GERSON fight, +4 magic is extremely desirable and makes your healing even stronger, which you're definitely relying on in that fight. It's really interesting to me that despite there being technically better options for attack, Devil's Knife is actually the better option for both the Chapter 3 and 4 secret bosses. I think it's intentional, and I think it makes a lot of sense if you consider the Shadow Crystals as one path. Each one, at least somewhat, teaches Susie something. And while JEVIL doesn't particularly impart any specific knowledge to Susie, he does, indirectly, through Devil's Knife, lend a hand against the yet faster, yet stronger opponents that he warned us about.
Metamorphosis.
The second Shadow Crystal is obtained from SPAMTON Neo. This is the outlier crystal for this train of analysis. Susie and SPAMTON don't really have that much in common, and I don't think SPAMTON really teaches Susie anything, nor are his items particularly good on Susie. This makes sense, as he's mostly related to Chris. The Dealmaker is, of course, completely cracked, and is easily the best armor in the game right now, but it's probably better on Rousey in most scenarios. And of course, the Puppet Scarf is a Rousey only item. However, I believe that SPAMTON does kind of play into this. He gets Susie thinking. It is Susie who questions what the hell he was actually talking about, and while Rousey attempts to brush this off, it's clear in later chapters that this kind of thing is not something Susie appreciates. I don't really have much else to say about SPAMTON here, unfortunately, so we'll move on to the next crystal, which I touched on earlier. third shadow crystal is obtained from the Roaring Knight. Susie is extremely important to this battle. Not only is she the one who actually talks back to the knight and stands her ground the most, but she's also the key to victory, both mechanically through GridBuster being the only thing that even remotely deals decent damage to the knight, but also narratively. It is Susie's clash against the knight that rewards us the Black Shard and forces the knight to drop their Shadow Crystal. The Shadow Mantle, which is related to this fight for obvious reasons, can be argued to go well on any of the three party members, but I fully believe that you're supposed to put it on Susie. Ralsei needs good equipment for Kill Pro to be even worth using, and he's best used for keeping everyone else alive. And unfortunately, he can't do that very well if he's the last one standing, because the Knight's swoon effect makes regular healing much less effective. You can make an argument for Chris. Chris is the easiest party member to get back up since they only get downed and not swooned, and also the Knight prioritizes the one with the mantle for targeting, which kind of allows you to use Chris as an HP sponge. They have the mantle, they get targeted, they get downed, you heal them back up, and they get targeted again, redirecting damage away from the other party members. But ultimately, I think the mantle is designed for Susie. When you equip it to Ralsei, his response is a bit uncertain. Should I wear this? Compare with Susie, who reacts very positively. Hell yeah, what's this? And if you don't know the specifics about the knight targeting, then it makes most sense to protect Susie with everything you have. Overall, I think it's pretty clear that Susie is the key to this fight. It's only by her standing her ground, by refusing to give in, that we're able to persevere enough to force the knight to lose in any conceivable way. The fourth Shadow Crystal is given by the Hammer of Justice, GERSON Boom. The GERSON fight is also blatantly Susie related. You literally can only fight him with Susie, and the whole fight and side quest is basically a trading arc for her. I don't think I really need to explain why this secret boss is related to Susie, but there's actually a lot to say about GridBuster here. GERSON has a strange relationship with GridBuster. He's able to cast it himself against the Titan. Why? It's not like Deltarune is lazy and reusing assets here, it's clearly a conscious decision. GERSON even has his own kind of wave attack that he uses against us, but no, he uses GridBuster here. Why? Well, let's think about the very thing that GERSON was trying to teach Susie. As a secret boss, his philosophy ends up being that he doesn't really care. He doesn't care about the truth. He doesn't let it define him. Prophecy schmophecy. If you care too much about destiny, you won't see the path ahead of you. And if you aren't blinded by the light, you can read in between the lines. So, to me at least, it makes perfect sense that he'd also know GridBuster. Because, just like Susie, when confronted with the fate of the universe in bright, bold text, he just laughs it off and smashes it to pieces. This is also why, in my opinion, he's literally the only character who can reflect GridBuster. Not even the Knight was able to do that. While he might not have the same resolve to challenge fate as Susie does, he firmly believes it to be possible and is driven in a similar way. GERSON is by far the most blatant hint for the direction the Shadow Crystals are taking us. He basically spells it out for us. Put a pin in this, by the way. I'll come back to it later. Every secret boss, minus SPAMTON, is important to Susie in at least some respect. JEVIL is the first trial, and it's Susie who accepts his challenge of shark to shark. SPAMTON points out that there is a dark truth at the heart of the dark world and gets her thinking about what it might mean. The Knight is an impossible foe who Susie stands up against, and GERSON mentors her and teaches her that standing up against fate is a fight worth pursuing. With all of this established, I'd like to take one more detour and talk about the prophecy. The second hero of the prophecy is the girl with hope crossed on her heart. As many before me have pointed out, this depiction doesn't exactly seem to fit Susie. The weapon is wrong, and the silhouette, while not impossible to read as Susie, doesn't really look like her that much. This gets into a much longer discussion, one I can't possibly hope to condense into this video, but in essence, I am of the opinion that this was supposed to be Noelle Holiday. And while the silhouette doesn't exactly seem to fit her either, there seems to be at least some weirdness going on with second hero. However, I don't believe that this is the setup for some big twist where it's revealed that Susie is a hack fraud and isn't actually a real hero or anything like that. I believe that the prophecy has been tampered with, or more accurately, reinterpreted. Think back to what GERSON tells us. Stories can be retold, they can be changed. The Legend of Tenna is an edited version of Mantle. which is a ROM hack or similar of Cat Batters the RPG, which is a ripoff of Dragon Blazers, which is an adaptation of Lord of the Hammer, which is based on the Prophecy, which is based on Deltarune. I believe that this kind of scenario is occurring with the Prophecy itself. Many out there right now believe that Gaster wrote the Prophecy himself, but I don't think that this is the case. I think that the repeated emphasis on retelling a story and changing the details is applicable to the story itself. This is what Gaster has been trying to do. He is trying to create a new future with us, one that shines brightly from our hope. So I believe that this Prophecy originally had Noelle as the second hero, and Susie was simply supposed to be a different part of it. I believe that the Prophecy was attempting to introduce Susie as a different The Girl. However, because it's technically using the same term to refer to both Noelle and Susie, their roles can be altered. And so, Susie, through Gaster's interventions, became the second hero. All he had to do was somehow ensure that Susie was late to school. Which seems a bit weird for him to be able to do, but who knows, maybe he's got a man on the inside or something.
Edited breaks here with an additional note. Susie is familiar with both Dragon Blazers 2 and Blood Crushers 2, but not the originals, specifically only the sequels, which makes sense if she is only part of the Gaster era.
You may wonder why he would do this. Why would it be so important to have Susie involved? I believe it's simply because of who Susie is. When confronted with fate, she laughs it off. She won't let it happen. Whereas someone like Noelle would likely try and make peace with fate, or accept it as a horrible truth, Susie just refuses. She refuses to play by the rules. She won't let it happen. Which, again, gets us back to Rudebuster. Rudebuster is important. It's important enough to be the name of the main battle theme. It's important enough to be the symbol that identifies Susie in the Prophecy. I believe that Rudebuster and what it represents is why Gaster chose Susie. Noelle might maybe have hope crossed on her heart in some ways, but it would be passive hope, wistful hope, that things might maybe turn out okay. She has hope in her heart that Des might still be out there somewhere, for instance. But Susie? Susie has active hope. With every fiber of her being, she has that hope. She inspires that hope in others. It's, as Rousey puts it, infectious. She infects herself with hope and grows it. That gave me hope, even just a little. And recently, that hope's been growing. She infects Rousey with that hope. Susie's hope, her naive hope, it's infectious, isn't it, Chris? So, until we see fate with our own eyes, let's believe too. She gives Tenna hope.
I feel electric. I feel like $1 million. This must be what hope feels like.
And most interestingly, she indirectly gives Sham hope. But for some reason, I can't help but think you may win. What is this feeling? Hope? Whatever it is, it's quite funny. This one might seem like a bit of a stretch, but remember that the only reason we could even beat the knight is because of Susie. And the secret boss that Sham is alluding to here is GERSON, who we fight with only Susie. Remember what GERSON told us. Susie has the white pen, that which draws all over the dark pages of fate, known as hope. I believe that Gaster picked up his own pen to transform Deltarune into his Deltarune, one where Susie steps up to bat as the second hero of Prophecy, so that she could, in turn, seize that opportunity, pick up her own white pen, and write her own ending, a retelling of a retelling. The words on the wall call her a hero. Maybe that's not what they were meant to mean, but does it even matter? Through her grit, her determination, her resolve, it won't make a difference in the end. She might not have been intended to be the second hero, but she is Angel Dammit, and the universe is just gonna have to accept that. Sure, she might not have been chosen by the angel or whatever the hell wrote that prophecy, but she was chosen by one Dr. Wingaster, who considers her very, very wonderful. She wields the white pen to draw all over fate. And, of course, that white pen has a name. And its name? Rudebuster. And that was my thoughts on Rudebuster. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very fun to work on something like this again. It's been way too long. Will I make a third video essay? I really don't know. I don't really have plans for one at the moment, but you never know. I might get motivation to do something else like this. Oh, if you're still watching, you should check out The Disciples of Aren, the video game I'm developing. You can check out a teaser of some gameplay here. In any case, the new chapters have completely turned the theorizing community upside down. but it also kind of feels like nothing has changed. It's a really weird feeling. In any case, I am very excited to see what this new era of the community has in store for us. So until next time, see ya.